Hi YouTube world, and welcome back to the Crazy Foursome channel, where we talk about everything to do with our lives as an expat family. So as you guys will know, we moved from New Zealand to the UK a couple of months ago, and it has been amazing. New Zealand does have its fair share of issues all the same, so I want to tell you guys some of the things that can be really annoying about living there or even visiting there. I have been feeling pretty homesick, so maybe this video is gonna help me to kind of get it out and feel a bit better. So without further ado, let's get stuck into the video. So the first thing I really don't miss about New Zealand is the price of internet and phone. New Zealanders get a rough deal when it comes to this. This is a big deal is because the internet is expensive in New Zealand. You pay a lot, either purchase a phone, then on top is your plan. In New Zealand we were paying $300 to $400 per month for the internet plus our mobile plans. Now we pay a fraction of that, and have great internet and coverage on our mobiles. I guess the more competition a country has equals better deals. The second thing I don't really miss about New Zealand is the weather. So it's really hard for me to answer the question, what's the weather like in New Zealand? Because it's just made up of so many different microclimates. What you get down in the south of the South Island is completely different to the north of the North Island. We're talking about humid and tropical versus literally glaciers, so you've got a whole range in New Zealand. But one thing that is consistent is that the weather's so changeable, you just cannot make plans based on the weather. But in any given day you can have clouds and rain in the morning, and you decide not to do anything for that day. Then in the afternoon the most beautiful day you've ever seen comes out, blue skies, hot weather, 28 degrees, and you're like, what is happening? You always have to be prepared for every single circumstance. Wind could be extreme as well, which also could impact on your daily plans. On top of that, not all houses are double glazed or insulated, so the weather can impact how you feel in your house. The next point is about transport and the fact that you basically have to own a car in New Zealand. I mean, with a few exceptions, as in your living city centre and like Auckland, Wellington or Christchurch kind of thing. Even then people will probably have cars because they want to do their grocery shopping or escape for the weekend or whatever. Like pretty much everyone has a car. In the UK you can absolutely survive without a car because there's a supermarket and amenities pretty close, literally on every single street. So if you go grocery shopping you just have to walk down the road to get home, whereas in New Zealand, again, small population, so many advantages, but one of the disadvantages is that there's not that demand, so that you could have a supermarket on every single street. There's just not. You have to hop in the car and you'd have to drive maybe 10 minutes to your closest supermarket kind of thing. And even getting between the cities, you know, in UK we're connected by rail lines, like hop to London from Paris in 2 hours 45, this kind of thing. And in New Zealand, I mean, there's a train, but it's old, slow, and it would take literally the better part of an entire day to get from Auckland to Wellington on the North Island, for example. So what this means is if you're traveling around New Zealand, you have to rent a car or you have to rent a camper van to get around. Another point about New Zealand that's a little bit disappointing is the quality of the housing, because the housing in New Zealand is extremely expensive compared to the average salary in the country. You know, it's great for homeowners because the property values are worth more and more and more, but when you look what you get for your money, it's kind of insane. Because in New Zealand it was colonized so quickly and growth happened so rapidly, there are so many houses that have just kind of been whacked up, wooden houses, and they have no insulation. Another thing about living in New Zealand that sucks is how harsh the sun rays are over there. There is a hole in the ozone layer, you get sunburned incredibly easily. Like in the summertime, I would recommend wearing a bit of sunblock on your skin every day, even if you're not going to the beach or anything, because you'll just be out on the deck eating with friends or having a drink or something, and you'll absolutely be at risk of getting sunburned. It happens so quickly, so as a result, just like Australia, we do have really high sun rates of skin cancer, so it's just something you've got to think about in the back of your mind. Another thing I don't really miss about New Zealand is that there is a genuine risk of natural disasters over there. So in New Zealand's history there have been big earthquakes that have killed a lot of people, volcanic explosions. You know, it's a country built on volcanoes. It's right on a fault line between two plates of the earth, which are often shifting and causing the ground to rumble a little bit. Now, I couldn't talk about the downsides of New Zealand without talking about the cost of living. And when I mean the cost of living, I just mean like for your basics. So your electricity bill can be expensive in New Zealand compared to the UK. And the food, what's crazy is because we export so much of our meat. For example, New Zealand lamb costs you more in New Zealand than it does in the UK. Several times I have seen New Zealand kiwi fruit, New Zealand lamb, New Zealand produce and meat just cheaper in the UK than it is in New Zealand, which is kind of unfair. Another point would be the schooling. Now this might cause a debate, but in New Zealand we had to pay a donation for the children to attend school. We had to pay for their stationery and books as well as uniforms. The uniforms were a lot more expensive in New Zealand. Okay guys, well I hope that this was interesting to you and that you learnt something about life in New Zealand. If you're a Kiwi living in New Zealand right now, or if you've lived abroad or currently living abroad, let me know what things you wouldn't miss or you don't miss about New Zealand. Maybe I've missed something, but this is just sort of on my list. Obviously, in saying all of this, I still love New Zealand. I will leave you with this video and I'll see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos, comment what you love or hate about where you live. See ya.